Characters are the heart of any story. They provide the emotional connection that draws the audience in. They serve as the lens through which the world, themes, and conflicts of the narrative are experienced. Few shows excel at character development as much as ReZero. Every character has a unique motivation driving them forward, shaping the story through their actions. At the center of it all is Subaru, but one could argue that Roswaal has had an even greater impact on the story, at least up to this point. So, we'll begin unraveling the tree from 400 years ago, where a young Roswaal, suffering from an incurable disease, loved a witch and has been cursed ever since. Around 400 years ago, the concept of magic was rare, and only a select few individuals in the entire world could use it. No one knew about the existence of mana, let alone how to use it or its origins. During this time, the witches of sin began to emerge, with each one representing one of the deadly sins. Among these witches was Echidna, the witch of greed, who, consumed by her insatiable curiosity, desired to know more about the world, even if it meant exceeding the bounds of human morality. Echidna had 3 disciples, Roswaal, Beatrice, and Ryuzu. Beatrice, in particular, is a spirit. No one can create spirits except Odlagna. However, Echidna, using either her authority or some other unknown ability, was able to create spirits herself. Beatrice wasn't the only spirit she created. In addition to her, Echidna created 2 more spirits, which we will explore further in the spoiler section of this video. Echidna, consumed by her greed, began experimenting with all kinds of concepts. One of these was the study of souls and immortality. Through her research, she developed a forbidden spell called soul transcription, which allows a person's soul to be transferred into another body. However, she was unable to use this spell herself, as she couldn't find an individual capable of handling the immense size of her soul. After her death, Roswaal continued her studies and eventually succeeded in transcribing his own soul. However, this came with a caveat. He was only able to transcribe his soul into the bodies of his descendants. Another witch who lived during this time was Sekhmet, the witch of Sloth. Each of the witches of sin had consumed a witch factor, granting them the authority of their respective sins. In Sekhmet's case, she consumed the witch factor of Sloth. Carmilla, the witch of Lust, was another witch of sin whose actions caused chaos. Her ability made others perceive her as the person they loved the most, leading to widespread conflict and even wars between nations, as countless individuals believed they were in love with her. Minerva is the witch of wrath. One key aspect to understand about the witches is that they fully embrace their respective sins without feeling any shame or regret. Minerva's wrath stemmed from her anger at the world's suffering and her desire to end it. This is why her punches had the power to heal the wounded. Typhone, the witch of pride, judged the world with a childlike innocence. To her, the world was strictly black and white, and she enforced her sense of justice based on this simplistic view. However, this rigid perspective made her actions harsh and unforgiving, causing the world to despise her for it. Each of the witches had a profound impact on the world, and their influence continues to be felt even to this day. Among them, it can be argued that Daphne, the witch of Gluttony, had the greatest impact. Even after her death, her creation still roamed the world. Driven by her goal of eradicating hunger, she created Mabeasts, creatures meant either to kill humans or to be killed by them. In this way, she sought to ensure that humans would never feel hunger. Among the various Mabeasts she created, 3 stand out as the most significant. The 3 great Mabeasts, the white whale, the great rabbit, and the black serpent. The white whale, being enormous, could sustain people for a long time by providing a substantial food source. Similarly, The great rabbit, with its ability to multiply endlessly, offered a never-ending supply of food. However, the last of the great Mabeasts, the Black Serpent, was not designed to be eaten. Instead, it was created to eliminate hunger by killing those who experienced it. Before we move on to the Witch of Envy, it's important to address two additional sins, Vainglory and Melancholy. The witch factor of Vainglory resides within Pandora, whose ability allows her to literally rewrite events, making her one of the most powerful characters in the story. The witch factor of Melancholy resides within the Warlock of Melancholy. Around this time, the Warlock of Melancholy seemed to be pursuing Echidna, though the reason for his actions remains a mystery. It also may be the case that the Warlock's soul now resides within Roswaal, although this is not 100% confirmed. I'll be putting the reasoning for this in the comments below. The Witch of Envy, however, was unlike the other witches. While the other five were powerful in their own right, Satella, consumed by her envy, was able to engulf half the world in darkness. The reasons for her actions remain a subject of speculation. Some believe she was driven by jealousy, while others claim it was simply her nature to kill. Regardless, none spoke kindly of this witch. Although not yet fully explained, Satella appears to have a strong affection for Subaru. Many speculate that she is the one who granted him the authority of return by death. This authority prevents Subaru from dying, either by rewinding him to a prior point where he was alive or by literally forcing the world itself to revert to a state where Subaru is still alive. After Satella's rampage, a sage, a sword saint, and a dragon joined forces to confront her. Although these individuals were among the most powerful beings to ever walk the land, they could not destroy Satella. Instead, they were only able to seal her away, with the sage taking responsibility for the seal. The sage entrusted his apprentice to watch over it, and this apprentice has faithfully fulfilled this duty for 400 years, awaiting the sage's return. Around the same time, Flugel the sage passed down the witch factor of Sloth to a young spirit named Petelgeuse. Petelgeuse would later create the witch cult, though his ultimate purpose for doing so remains a mystery. Meanwhile, Roswaal, through the use of soul transcription, began to extend his influence into the future by possessing the bodies of his descendants. 300 years later, the elf people migrated to Elior Forest and became responsible for guarding a seal that existed inside the forest. During the Great Calamity, when Satella lost control, all the witches except for the Witch of Vainglory and the Warlock of Melancholy perished. Their witch factors were absorbed by people across the world, who would become known as the Sin Archbishops. Pandora, the Witch of Vainglory, was largely responsible for recruiting most of them. The witch factor of greed fell into the hands of Regulus Cornelius, who became the Sin Archbishop of Greed. Regulus possesses absolute rights, meaning no one may interrupt him, and attacks are unable to touch him. He travels the world collecting wives, forming what is known as his little kingdom, where he reigns as king. Regulus, however, does not bother remembering the names of his wives, assigning them numbers instead. Number 184 is the most famous of them. None of Regulus's wives are allowed to express emotions, and they are forbidden from aging. Those who violate his rights face the end. In Elior Forest, where the elves lived, Emilia's parents, two unknown individuals resided and were blessed with a child named Emilia. Emilia's parents were absent throughout much of her life, and the person who cared for her was her aunt and adoptive mother, Fortuna. It is known that the Witch of Wrath, Minerva, was familiar with Emilia's parents, but the nature of their relationship remains undisclosed. Fortuna was in love with Petelgeuse, one of the founders of the witch cult. He would bring rations and clothes to the villagers who were meant to protect the seal. The key to the seal resides within Emilia, and Pandora, along with Regulus, attacked the forest to break the seal and unleash whatever was contained within to the world. Regulus, however, came to the village to take Fortuna as his 79th wife, though he was unsuccessful in doing so. During these events, Pandora whispered something in Petelgeuse's ear, causing him to laugh his first laugh. He would eventually take the seat for Sloth. It is also heavily implied that Fortuna became Sirius, the Sin Archbishop of Wrath. While this has never been explicitly stated, the similarities are striking. Each of the three great Mabeasts, created by the Witch of Gluttony, represented one of the three aspects of gluttony: gourmet, bizarre eating, and satiation. These three aspects each became separate factors for the gluttony siblings, with the most famous being Libat and Kaitos, who represents gourmet. On the other side, Roy Alfard represents bizarre eating, and Louis Arneb represents satiation. The Sin Archbishop representing lust is Capella Emerata Lugnica, who absorbed the witch factor of lust. Her last name, Lugnica, connects her to the royal family of the Lugnica kingdom, who perished from a mysterious disease. A popular theory suggests that Capella may have cursed the royal family using her dragon blood. Capella travels the world, gathering individuals she refers to as her children to carry out her bidding. Notable among her children are Elsa Granheert and Mille Portrude. Additionally, following the deaths of Theris van Astrea and Kurgan, once known as Wallachnia's strongest generals, the witch cult is believed to have collected their bodies. It is suspected that Capella cast the sacrament of the immortal king on them, reanimating their corpses to serve her purposes. Roswaal's soul transcription continued, eventually reaching Roswaal J. Mathers. Old Lagna gifted the first Sword Saint with the divine protection of the Sword Saint. Over generations, this divine protection was passed down through the descendants of the first Sword Saint until it reached Teresa van Astrea. Teresa eventually fell in love with Wilhelm van Astrea, and their union resulted in a son named Heinkel. Around this time, a person named Stride Valatia absorbed the witch factor of pride and became the Sin Archbishop of Pride for the witch cult. Stride Valatia was the mortal enemy of Wilhelm van Astrea. On the other hand, as Heinkel grew, he married and had a son named Reinhard. During the event that would become known as the Great Conquest, Teresa fought valiantly against the White Whale, but seemingly lost her life in the process. Following her death, the divine protection of the Sword Saint passed on to Reinhard van Astrea. Meanwhile, Roswaal K. Mathers was recognized as the strongest magician in the kingdom of Lugnica. This title passed down through generations of Roswaals, with the current Roswaal L. Mathers being no exception. Over hundreds of years, the successive Roswaals relentlessly pursued a method to revive their master, or at least meet her again, though they had no success. Eventually, Roswaal L. Mathers discovered, through the Book of Wisdom, that a person named Subaru would appear in the royal capital. This person would grow infatuated with a girl living in the ruined elf village. Acting on this prophecy, Roswaal approached Emilia and persuaded her to join the royal selection, all in a calculated effort to bring her to his side, and by extension, to bring Subaru into his plans. For the sake of reuniting with his master, Roswaal was prepared to do anything. He placed unwavering faith in the Book of Wisdom, a gift from his master, and followed its instructions diligently. The book directed him to the demon village, which would be attacked by the witch cult. There, Roswaal saved and took in Rem and Ram, twin sisters born with only one horn each. However, Ram lost her horn while defending her sister. Roswaal also took in Frederica, the daughter of Riala, from the sanctuary and employed her as a maid. Frederica had a younger brother, Garfield, who would later join Emilia's camp. While Roswaal meticulously followed the instructions of the Book of Wisdom, there was one significant omission: Otto. The book did not mention Otto at all. Subaru was eventually transported to this new world through an unknown process. It is speculated that Subaru possesses the authority of return by death, believed to originate from Satella. Around 50 years ago, the Lugnica royal family began to succumb to an illness, with one member dying after another. According to the Dragonstone prophecy, 5 candidates were to be chosen to vie for the throne. These candidates were identified based on how the dragon insignia reacted to their touch, glowing in their hand. This process led to the formation of the 5 factions competing for the throne. Emilia formed her own camp, and later, Subaru would become her knight. Anastasia Hoshin is another royal candidate, with Julius serving as her knight. Julius also has an adoptive brother named Joshua, who is a part of her camp, along with Ricardo's mercenary group. Ricardo is the leader of this group, and its main members include the 3 siblings, Mimi, Hetero, and Typhone. On the other hand, Reinhard accidentally discovered that Felt was eligible to run for the throne. Although reluctant at first, Felt eventually formed her camp, with Reinhard as her knight. Rasheen's and his group also joined her camp. Priscilla is another candidate, leading her camp with All as her knight. Schult is also a notable member of the Priscilla camp. Crush Karsten formed the Crush camp. Ferris, the kingdom's best healer, as her knight. Wilhelm van Astrea, a skilled swordsman and veteran, is also a part of this camp. Although this should not be in the spoilers section of the video, as the anime didn't cover it until now, I decided to put it here. After 400 years, Echidna's plans manifested at last. She eventually got resurrected using one of the Ryuzu Shima clones she called Omega, which means the end. Omega now travels the world with her party, and along with her are the Witches of Sin in a crystal. Omega was given a 2-year deadline to get her powers back by Minerva. In her journey, she encountered many people who followed her in her journey to see the world. The Beast of the End was created by Echidna, the Witch of Greed. This beast would later become known as Puck, who eventually traveled to Elior Forest to melt the ice-trapping Emilia. After defeating Meliquera, Puck became one of the 4 great spirits, representing the element of fire. Echidna also created an artificial spirit named Eridna, who now follows Anastasia Hoshin. Up until now, most of the characters we've encountered belong to the Dragon Kingdom of Lugnica. However, beyond Lugnica lies another powerful nation, the Sacred Wallachia Empire, renowned for possessing the strongest military in the world. Among its ranks is an individual capable of matching the current Sword Saint, Reinhard van Astrea, widely regarded as the strongest man alive. The Sacred Wallachia Empire is a nation of absolute order, ruled by Emperor Vincent Wallachia, whose words are law. Any hesitation or defiance from a member of the Imperial Army results in immediate execution. The Empire's administration is overseen by Prime Minister Berusutetsu Fondarufon. Beneath the Emperor lies the backbone of the Empire's might, the Imperial Army, widely regarded as the strongest military force in the world. This army is divided into 2 key components: the Imperial soldiers, who form the bulk of the forces, and the Imperial generals, who command them. At the top of this hierarchy are the 9 divine generals, the Empire's greatest warriors and the guardians of its dominance. The 9 divine generals are ranked from 1 to 9, with the first being the most powerful. They represent the pinnacle of the Wallachian military and are seen as heroes among their people, except for the number 1 seat, who doesn't bother. The generals wield near absolute authority within their respective ranks. They can command imperial soldiers, lead military campaigns, and even act as regional governors. To replace a general, one must either defeat the current general in a sanctioned duel or prove their worth by achieving an extraordinary military feat. The first seat of the 9 divine generals is reserved for Sisyllus, who is said to be so strong that he could take on Reinhard. In one of the routes, it is mentioned that he forced Reinhard to use the divine protection of shedding blood, which activates when Reinhard loses a significant amount of blood. Another country that exists in the world is the Karargi city-states. Just as Reinhard in Lugnica holds the title of Sword Saint and Sisyllus in Wallachia occupies the first divine seat, Halabel in Kararagi is said to be able to rival both of them. In this world, we also have spirits, among which are the 4 great spirits. Zerestia is the great spirit residing in Kararagi.